Thursday, the 6th of July 2023. And you know why they don't use sort of bales like this in most places now is that they like the animals to have a good square meal. LOL. I got that joke off Adam the Woo from years ago, so I'm just trying to throw him under the bus. Yes, I'm sure Adam the Woo is a big enough YouTuber to get over third-rate content throwing him under the bus for a bad quality joke, which is anyway a very subjective subject. But anyway, moving on. Welcome back to Third Rate Thursday, episode 19. We're almost at 6 months of Third Rate Thursday and the Wednesday weeklies. If you combine them together, we are virtually at 6 months. So it's quite an unbelievable achievement in my estimation. Again, subjective, very subjective subject. But this week on Third Rate Thursday, we are going to be discussing last week's mailbag. We're also going to be talking about the subject of this week's Third Rate Thursday, which is weirdness, strange science and synchronicity, which we'll talk about when we get to it. And also we'll be announcing what this Sunday's Third Rate content release will be. So buckle up and I'll see you out here on Third Rate Thursday. So delving into Third Rate Thursday, last week's Third Rate Thursday mailbag. First out is Louise Copeland. Hi Louise. And she says to our question about tattoos last week, if you remember, have you got a tattoo? What have you got? And are you proud of it? You know, what your opinion on tattoos was. And we're starting off with Louise Copeland. And she says, first of all, she says she loves sweet corn with loads of butter after we did show our sweet corn update. And we will give you another one of them before harvest time, definitely. But she says that she's got that tattoos are expressing yourself through art, which they most definitely are, Louise. And I couldn't think of a better reason for having a tattoo, really. Although we might hear some more. But she says it's a Chinese symbol for her kids. It's a K. So yeah, that sounds great, Louise. And obviously it means a lot to you for your kids. And it sounds like a great reason to get a tattoo. But moving on, we have Neil Stokes, Shrewsbury 79, CV Shrewsbury 79. He says he has a Mickey Mouse tattoo on his left arm. It was a great idea when he was in his 20s, but not so much now, being in his 50s. And he says, always watch your videos, Dan, even though I forget to comment sometimes. Well, I'll tell you something, Neil. Don't worry about commenting. But if you want to comment on something, feel free. But if you don't want to, don't. It's a free country. I don't feel bothered about that. But thank you for answering our question last week on Third Rate Thursday. And Neil saying he partially regrets his tattoo that he had when he was in his 20s of Mickey Mouse. Although there's lots of people in their 50s who are Disney fans and who like Mickey Mouse, and I'm sure have got Mickey Mouse tattoos. And again, it's something that you can remember your 20s by. Almost like it'll give you a nostalgia pop. So it's still a worthwhile thing, I think, Neil. But moving on, anyway, with the Third Rate Thursday mailbag, we've got Sonic Storyteller. And he says, thanks, Dan. I had no idea I would get a mention. LOL. Best wishes, Phil. But Phil, Third Rate Thursday, thank you for acknowledging that, and you're a great viewer for Third Rate content and Third Rate Thursday, and thanks for the many comments and interactions with the channel. But again, what I'll say, it's not just to Phil, it's to everyone watching. Third Rate Thursday is a direct link, if you like, to Third Rate content. So it's up to date mostly, and I will read out any comments from the Third Rate Thursday mailbag the week after. And again, you don't have to comment about the question of the week. You can comment about anything, any observations about third rate content or anything you like. As I always say, it's a completely free speech forum, up to the limits of YouTube, its terms and conditions. But anyway, thank you, Phil. And once again, moving on, we've got Sharpie Pink 123, I think a first time commenter on Third Rate Thursday. They say they wouldn't dare ever get one. Just look at all the dire ones out there. That's scary. I think I showed a few on the thumbnail for last week's video. And it's the permanent thing that's really scary. Yeah, I completely agree with you there, Sharpie. The thought of having something on me that you can't remove kind of freaks me out. But so I agree with you there. Forever is a very long time, and you can't change your mind. I just don't get it personally when there are brilliant, week-lasting temporary ones and henna to use, and you can change your mind all day long, every day. Yeah, that's absolutely true. There's some, just like tattoos, there's some absolutely fantastic tattoo artists. There is also some really fantastic henna artists, and I'm not sure if they cross over. Perhaps they do. I'm not an expert, but yeah, there is some great henna art, and I've seen it. So we've also got, we got Rev Dan Cat, and he says, here for the sweet corn update. Yeah, well, Dan, we'll keep you updated up until harvest time. Hope to show you the harvest when it comes, as we're moving towards harvest time, as you can see by the background of this week's Third Rate Thursday. But he says, my one tattoo is a practical one. I have to double check paper sizes on a near daily basis. So I ended up getting them tattooed on my arm so I can quickly reference them. That sounds an absolutely brilliant, practical reason for getting a tattoo, Dan. And if you've watched Dan's channel, it's really interesting, and Dan knows a lot about his stuff, about graphics and printing things and art and all, and I very much show my ignorance by what I'm saying there. But yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. And Dan says, a question for a future video. You seem really confident when filming yourself in public. Oh, thanks, Dan. Something I still struggle with. How's that evolved over time for you? Well, I'll tell you something, Dan. I have actually thought about this a bit. I did read it earlier on today. I hadn't got round to reading the comments, but yeah, I gave it some thought. And thank you, Dan, saying I look confident. But I'm confident somewhat. And let me tell you, when I started, I'm just thinking back. The first actually edited video I did, I was out in public. It was the Gabon Snack Shack. And I was self-conscious. There wasn't many people around that day, and this leads me to how I started. Is I picked my spots. So when I first started, I would be selective of when I would film in public, sort of to areas where I deemed there wasn't a huge amount of people, and got myself going that way. Where now, I really don't, unless I'm not getting in someone's way or going to trip over them or walk into them from not looking at them, I don't really worry too much about other people now. I've sort of evolved up to really being just interested in the subject that I want to document, and people around are just peripheral. I'm focused on what I'm doing, really, and what I've got to say, because I'm more focused on not forgetting things and sort of covering what I want to say in the take. Whereas if I'm worried about people around me, I tend to you forget what you want to say, and it's hard enough for me anyway, remembering everything. But yeah, so it was a gradual thing, from picking my spots when I started, and sort of slowly getting to the stage where I don't really care. I mean, I don't really care what people think anyway. And of course, it isn't the most natural thing walking around with a phone or a camera, talking to yourself, just like in your own world. But I think that is partly what makes it easier, is you do go into your own world when you're filming. So it helps cut off any possible funny looks you get and stuff. Although I will say, I do find people to be really nice most of the time, 90% of the time, helpful. They'll usually stop when I'm selfieing normally to not get in the shot. But generally, yeah, people are nice, and that is my journey so far with being confident in public and filming. As you can see, it's quiet here today though, so I picked my spot. So there you go, Dan. That's the best answer I can give at the moment. And Dan, of course, Dan, is a very capable presenter on his channel, and has really got an easy way and manner in front of the camera, which I admire very much. So really, I would think that if you did want to film in public, Dan, you'd be a natural once you got going. Anyway, moving on, and thanks, Dan. So moving on to the subject of this week's, the question, the poser, and the title of this week's Third Rate Thursday: Weirdness, Strange Science, and Synchronicity. It was just something I've been thinking about in the last few days, and it's a story. I could tell you loads of strange stories of stuff that's happened to me, but it's a story that's sort of been going on for the last few weeks that I just thought I'd retell here on Third Rate Thursday, and use it as the question for this week's poser. So it's a few weeks ago now. I was watching a program that I watch from time to time, well, most weeks. I think it's actually having a summer break at the moment. It's a show hosted by Thomas Sheridan and Sarah Maldini, I think. It's Hocus Focus. It's like a magazine show of sort of occult and weirdness that's happened or going on or happened in history, and it's quite interesting. And I was watching it, the last one before summer break a few weeks ago, which had a big feature about the Titanic, and I realised when I was watching it, I had never actually researched. I've researched most things. I hardly knew next to nothing about the Titanic, except that it had sunk in. I didn't even know the year for sure, but it sunk in the just before World War One, year or two before World War One, and it was a big tragedy, and it was like an iconic disaster. But other than that, I didn't really know anything about it, and I think partly that would be the age I am. And the main movie of Titanic was James Cameron's Titanic, which I always avoided watching. I've never watched it. I could always tell it was like a romantic love story, very late 90s, and it just wasn't the sort of thing I enjoy watching. It was like what's deemed a chick flick, perhaps, but with a major tragedy as a background. I was never interested in it, and probably that's why I never really got into researching the Titanic. But after watching Hocus Focus, the show with Thomas Sheridan and Sarah Maldini, I was like, wow, I didn't know anything, and I was really gripped. And Thomas on that show, Thomas Sheridan, did recommend, if you didn't like the James Cameron Titanic, recommended a movie, A Night to Remember, the late 1958 adaptation of a book, still thought of as one of the most factual books about the sinking of the Titanic. I've forgotten the author's name, but I'll leave a link to the film. But I watched that, and it's in colour nowadays on YouTube, although it was originally black and white. I watched that and I was absolutely gripped and haunted. It really, really affected me watching it, and after watching it, I just did loads and loads of research on the Titanic. I wasn't planning on doing a third-rate content video on it or anything, but I go down these rabbit holes, and it's just for the information, really. I'm just information mining, and I find it so fascinating, and there's so many weird things about the Titanic. I mean, I'm not going to go into them all now, or any of them now, actually, because the video would go on forever. But if you go down that rabbit hole, there's loads of interesting human stories and weirdness. And but what adds to the weirdness of the Titanic story for me personally is that very weekend, while I watched A Night to Remember, which I will leave a link to down in the description box. Probably a bit naughty, but I don't know if it's past its copyright. But anyway, I'll leave the link to it. It's really, really good film if you like that sort of thing. And for me, it's the definitive Titanic movie. And anyway, so after I'd finished watching it, I spent the rest of the weekend, when I had time, researching Titanic, and I was still researching it come the Monday, and I was actually reading an article about the Titanic disaster online, obviously, and there was a link that wasn't on the article when I started reading it. It sort of suddenly popped up. I must have refreshed it or something, and it says Titan sub gone missing. So I clicked it. I thought I'd never heard of that before. Clicked it, and it was the actual very tragic story of the billionaires who went down in the Titan submersible and imploded, but they didn't know that at that time. This was on the Monday, and I was then shocked and gripped to the Titan story as well as the Titanic story. So it all happened in the couple of days, well, the day or day and a half since watching the Hocus Focus show and then A Night to Remember. But it was interesting because Thomas Sheridan did say on the Hocus Focus show, which he filmed probably a week before the Titan went missing, that about this family who were watching a documentary on the Titanic during the 1980s in Britain, I believe, and they were really whole family were intensely focused on the documentary about the Titanic, because it can do that to you anyway. And it was in summer, and then all of a sudden a block of ice fell through their roof and into their front room where they were all sitting watching the Titanic documentary, and it was completely unexplained. It was an unexplained weirdness, and he gave the possible reason for it being that they were all so focused on it that their minds kind of caused it to happen, which is certainly possible. But I just wonder, there must have been thousands of people who were watching Titanic documentaries and shows just off that one Hocus Focus show, because it gets a good viewership, that week, including myself. And I wonder, I'm not making a joke of it, but could we, or very much that interest in the Titanic that week, have had some sort of impact on that submersible? I mean, I'm really not making a joke of it, but I'm not saying it really happened, but it's possible. And it could have been that it was just unsafe, but it's just one of those things, isn't it? It really, I find it weird. I mean, not so weird that I was losing any sleep over it or anything, but it was just one of those strange things that happen. I mean, would you call it synchronicity, or something else? Because I've come to not just from that incident, over years of my observations through stuff that happens, just my own life, really, they're the best observations. I mean, second-hand accounts are interesting, but you're just taking someone's word for it. But through my own observations through my life, I find there is such things as synchronicities, or hi there. But I notice them. I mean, again, I don't make notes of them, but it's amazing how many times you're talking about somebody, and then you will go into town or go somewhere, and you'll bump into them or stuff like that. But it's also when you look. And synchronicity is a term that was coined by the 20th century pioneer in psychology, Carl Jung. And I mean, you can look it up, and there isn't actually a real scientific scientific reason for it, or actually argument against it. It's just one of those things that's obviously a very subjective thing when it happens to you. But yeah, but you've also got in science, really out there in cutting edge science, just have to take a break. Yeah, you've got like quantum mechanics, which when you actually look into it is borderline magic from my very layman point of view. But I mean, you've got so many interesting things. I mean, you've got quantum entanglement, and I believe the winners of the Nobel Prize for 2022, one of the categories, were scientists. I can't remember their name right now, but people who were working on the quantum entanglement theories and science, which is two atoms, I think, can be tied together, but be separated by huge distances in the material plane, but have effects on each other by just doing things to one, in a very simple term. So it's almost like cuts the time, the geographically, it means there is no distance between them, even though they are separated. I mean, it's really, really interesting. And I think these people won the Nobel Prize for their work into basically sort of proving that you can you can eliminate the history, you can eliminate the past. It sounds unbelievable, but yeah, they won the Nobel Prize for it. So, I mean, that is scientific strangeness. I mean, and when you think of things like examples like Schrodinger's cat, I don't think a cat was actually harmed in it, but when the cat can be alive or dead in the box at the same time because you're not looking at it, these things, really, you can spend all day thinking about them, really, and not come to any firm conclusions. But what I mean is, there is, from my point of view, there is a lot, and I'm not talking about ghosts or anything, there is a lot of strangeness in the world, and I actually like it myself, because I don't like the world being boring. So yeah, I mean, but tell us, what do you think about synchronicities, coincidences, strange things that might have happened to you? I mean, you could tell us about ghosts if you want, because they are strange, or anything else. And do you think the world is just what can be weighed and measured and nothing more? Or do you think there's a whole world that we can't see? And maybe science will catch up to it in years to come and explain these things that seem supernatural at the moment, but are actually natural, which are only supernatural because we don't understand them. It's a big question and there's a lot to talk about. But if you would like to chip in, I will read any answers out on next week's Third Rate Thursday. So you have been warned. But yeah, it's great to have a really up-to-date point of contact with anyone, and a very contemporary video that's been filmed on the day it was shot in most occasions, at the very least the day before, but today's video has been filmed on Thursday the 6th of July. So anyway, thanks for that. But moving on to this week's subject of third rate content for this Sunday's lunchtime release will be a video we only filmed this week, but I thought I'd get it on straight away because it might inspire people to visit these wonderful sculptures, or just enjoy it right as it was filmed virtually, which is, but I'm just telling you while it's still there, because it's there till the end of August, is the Salvador Dali Trail in Shrewsbury. Really interesting, lovely walk, and it was a bit of a memory lane because we haven't been in Shrewsbury Town Centre much this year, so it was nice to get back there and cover some of that ground. And it's really interesting seeing that great 20th century surrealists bronzes in Shrewsbury Town Centre. So I hope you join us on Sunday for Salvador Dali Sculpture Trail in Shrewsbury 2023. So anyway, thanks for watching to the end on Third Rate Thursday, and I'll see you on Sunday, hopefully, for the Salvador Dali Trail. And if I don't see you soon, I'll see you 3 times as soon. Don't forget to comment, to like, and very much subscribe, because we're pushing on for that 1,000 subscribers. And every subscription is very much appreciated. And thank you to everybody who subscribed up to now. So if I don't see you soon, I'll see you 3 times as soon. Third Rate Thursday, Third Rate Content, sign out. Bye-bye.